Café Sabarsky, 5th Avenue, Manhattan. Emily Morgan sat alone. 23 years old. Birthday. Cake with 23 candles. Nobody to blow them out with her. Daughter of billionaire Robert Morgan. $1 billion. Surrounded by luxury. Completely isolated. She was deaf from birth. Her father never learned sign language. 23 years. He'd learned only 2 signs. Hello, I love you. That's it. Everything else, money, transfers, text messages. Emily lived in a world where nobody spoke her language. She was about to blow out the candles alone. Then a man sat at the next table, with a small girl, 5 years old. The girl was upset, throwing a tantrum. Then the man started calming her, using sign language. Perfect ASL, natural, fluent. Emily froze. She watched them, father and daughter, conversing in signs. Like it was the most normal thing. The man noticed her staring. He turned, signed to her. Happy birthday. Perfect ASL. Emily's hands trembled. She signed back. Do you really know how to sign? His answer changed everything. I'm a professional interpreter. I learned it for love, for my late wife. This is Lucy. She's bilingual from birth. What happened next? They joined her birthday and became her family. In the most elegant cafe on 5th Avenue in Manhattan, Emily Morgan sat alone before a cake with 23 candles that no one would blow out with her. Daughter of real estate magnate Robert Morgan, with a fortune of $1 billion, she was surrounded by luxury, but completely isolated in her silent world. Deaf from birth, she lived in a universe where her father's money couldn't buy what she desired most, someone who truly understood her. She was about to leave when a man with a small girl sat down at the adjacent table. The little girl was throwing a tantrum, and suddenly the man began calming her using sign language with astonishing naturalness. When their gazes met, he wished her happy birthday in perfect ASL. He was Marcus Rodriguez, a widower, professional interpreter who had learned that language for love. What happened next transformed the loneliest birthday into a moment that would change 3 lives forever. The golden light of Manhattan autumn filtered through the windows of Café Sabarsky on the Upper East Side, illuminating the solitary figure of Emily Morgan, 23 years old that October 15th, sitting at her usual table with a cake from the most expensive French patisserie in Manhattan that cost what a monthly salary would. 3 layers of Belgian chocolate mousse decorated with edible gold leaf ordered by her father's secretary with the impersonal note as always. Robert Morgan had resolved this birthday too, as he resolved everything, with a $65,000 transfer and a WhatsApp message that Emily reread for the umpteenth time. Fingers tracing the words on the screen, as if trying to transform them into something more tangible than pixels on a screen. Emily's world was made of silence, but not that romantic silence hearing people imagine. It was a dense silence, populated by gazes that looked away when she tried to communicate, uncomfortable smiles when she ordered by writing on her phone, conversations that happened around her as if she were invisible, simply because she couldn't hear them. In 23 years, her father had never learned more than a few basic signs of American Sign Language. Hello, and I love you, executed with the clumsiness of someone speaking a foreign language they're not really interested in mastering. He had preferred to delegate, specialized caregivers, private tutors, generously paid therapists to do what a father should do out of love. Her education had been impeccable on paper. Exclusive boarding school in Connecticut. Art history degree from Columbia with honors. A thesis on visual communication in Renaissance art that had impressed the committee. But all this hadn't brought her true connections. Only acquaintances interested in the surname she carried. Girls who feigned friendship to access the exclusive Morgan events. Men who saw her as an exotic challenge or worse, as a gateway to the family real estate empire. The Instagram profile with 30,000 followers told a story of a gilded life. Private jets to the Hamptons, $25,000 handbags, dinners at Michelin-starred restaurants. But no one noticed the sad eyes in the photos, the smile that never reached her gaze, the hands that in videos spoke a language no one stopped to understand. James, the waiter who had served her for years, approached with his usual professional smile. He had learned some basic signs. Coffee, toast, check. An effort Emily appreciated infinitely, even if it was limited. He pointed to the cake and made the gesture of lighting candles, looking around as if searching for someone who should arrive. Emily shook her head and signed alone. one of the few gestures James understood. She saw pity in his eyes. That pity she detested more than contempt, because at least contempt was honest. She took the lighter from her Louis Vuitton bag and began methodically lighting the 23 candles. She was about to blow them out when a movement at the adjacent table caught her peripheral attention. A man about 30 years old had just seated a girl about 5 years old. The little girl seemed agitated, pointing at something outside, crying. Emily was about to look away, accustomed to ignoring family scenes that didn't concern her, when she saw something that took her breath away. The man had started to sign, not improvised or approximate gestures, but true American Sign Language, fluid and natural, as if it were his first language. His hands danced in the air, creating words Emily could read perfectly, promising the girl the playground after breakfast. The little girl, clearly hearing by the absence of hearing aids, responded in the same silent language with precise little hands despite her age. Emily remained paralyzed with the lit candle in her hand, wax beginning to drip onto the perfection of the cake. She couldn't take her eyes off that silent but vibrant conversation. That father who spoke in signs with absolute naturalness. That girl who responded as if it were the most normal thing in the world. Marcus Rodriguez hadn't planned that morning at Café Sabarsky. Lucy had had the nightmares again that tormented her since Carmen died 2 years before, waking up calling for mommy and crying when reality hit her. He had held her until dawn singing the lullaby Carmen sang, deciding then to take a day off from the translation agency where he worked as an ASL interpreter. Café Sabarsky had been an impulse, an attempt to recreate that magic Carmen knew how to find in difficult moments. It was expensive for his finances as a widower with freelance work, but Carmen's life insurance money was saved precisely for these emotional rather than economic emergencies. While calming Lucy with signs, a habit started when she was a baby and converted into their special secret language, he noticed the girl at the adjacent table. First the cake with too many candles to be alone, then the silent tears on her perfectly made-up face. Finally, the hands that trembled while holding the lighter. But it was when she turned that Marcus understood everything. He immediately recognized that communication-hungry look he had seen 1,000 times in his years of work. The girl was deaf and was looking at them like a castaway looks at a ship on the horizon. Without reflecting, Marcus turned toward her and signed a birthday wish, adding that no one should blow out candles alone. Emily's reaction was immediate. She almost dropped the lighter, hands moving instinctively to respond, asking if he really knew how to sign. The conversation that followed flowed naturally, like water finding its course. Marcus introduced himself as a professional interpreter, Lucy as bilingual from birth. Emily felt her own name take shape in her true language for the first time in weeks, not written or mispronounced, but formed by hands that knew how to give it meaning. Lucy, with the typical immediacy of children, got up and approached, asking in perfect signs why Emily was crying on her birthday. The disarming simplicity of the question and the naturalness with which it was posed broke all social barriers. Marcus proposed joining her to celebrate, an offer Emily accepted, with a smile that was her first genuine one in months. James, surprised but efficient, helped join the tables while Lucy already climbed onto a chair, studying the cake with professional interest. During the hours that followed, Emily discovered what it meant to communicate without barriers. Marcus told his story with Carmen, the support teacher who became his wife, the bilingual home they had created where Lucy had grown up considering silence as eloquent as sound. He told of Carmen's last days, when the brain tumor had taken away her speech, but not her ability to sign, of her last silent but powerful words. Emily found herself sharing her own story as she never had. Mother dead in childbirth, father who had resolved her deafness as a logistical rather than emotional problem. Years of boarding school in Connecticut, surrounded by hearing girls, summers in empty villas in the Hamptons, boyfriends who had left her when the exotic charm of the deaf girl faded before daily reality. Lucy, apparently absorbed drawing on a napkin, suddenly looked up declaring that Emily's dad was silly, because if she couldn't hear, her dad would learn every way to talk to her. The childish frankness drew from Emily a liberating laugh, that unmodulated sound she had learned to contain, but that in that moment she didn't care was imperfect. When Lucy fell asleep in the chair with her head resting on Emily's arm, who didn't dare move so as not to wake her, Marcus looked at her with something in his eyes she didn't yet dare decipher. Before leaving, they exchanged numbers with the promise to see each other again. Lucy didn't have many adults in her life who knew how to sign, and Emily clearly needed friends who spoke her language. In the weeks that followed, Emily discovered what it meant to truly have someone in her life. Marcus and Lucy became constant presences. Dates in Central Park where Lucy ran while the adults conversed in fluid signs. Afternoons in Emily's penthouse in the Upper East Side, where the girl explored in wonder the luxurious but terribly empty spaces. It was in Emily's studio where the true connection deepened. The room was full of sculptures Emily had created, tactile works designed to be seen with hands. Lucy was immediately fascinated, learning to read shapes with her palms under Emily's patient guidance, discovering stories that marble and bronze told to those who knew how to listen with touch. Marcus watched his daughter flourish in those weeks. Nightmares diminished, smiles returned more frequently, and above all, she had resumed creating her bedtime stories in signs, those invented tales she used to share with Carmen and had stopped after her death. Marcus's modest apartment in the Bronx became another refuge for Emily. One night, while preparing dinner together, Lucy asked the question both adults feared and expected. With the iron logic of children, she asked if Emily could become her new mommy. Observing that Marcus liked Emily, she saw it in how he looked at her. That Emily liked Marcus, she saw it in how she smiled, and that she liked both of them. So the conclusion was obvious. The blush that colored the adults' faces was accompanied by a loaded silence. They had carefully avoided confronting the growing attraction, hiding it behind friendship and Lucy's well-being. Emily responded delicately that they were friends, but that she would always be there for Lucy. The girl seemed to accept the answer, but before returning to her drawings, added that Mommy had told her in dreams that she wanted Daddy happy again. Are you enjoying this story? Leave a like and subscribe to the channel. Now, let's continue with the video. That night, after putting Lucy to bed, they remained on the small balcony looking at the lights of Manhattan. The silence between them didn't need to be filled. It was a comfortable silence of two people who understand each other. When Marcus finally signed his fears of betraying Carmen, of making Lucy suffer if something went wrong, of not being enough for someone from Emily's world, she stopped him by taking his hands. She told him her life before was empty despite being full of things, that he and Lucy had shown her what it truly meant to belong to someone, and that she thought Carmen would be happy knowing her family had found love again. The kiss that followed tasted of new beginnings and silent promises. Lucy, who was spying on them from the window, signed only "finally" before returning to bed with a satisfied smile. The next day, Emily received the call she feared. Robert Morgan had returned from Dubai and wanted to see her, as always at the Plaza Hotel for an uncomfortable dinner where he would look at his phone while pretending to be interested in her life. This time Emily said no. If he wanted to see her, he should come to her house, and there were people she wanted to introduce him to. The encounter between Robert Morgan and Emily's new family was tense as a guitar string. The real estate magnate entered his daughter's apartment with the confident step of someone accustomed to owning every space, but stopped upon seeing that simply dressed man and the girl who moved her hands naturally. The dinner that followed was a disaster of misunderstandings. Robert spoke to Emily without looking at her, addressing Marcus as if he were a necessary interpreter, without understanding that his daughter read lips perfectly and didn't need intermediaries. Discomfort grew with each failed attempt at communication. It was Lucy who broke the tension with her characteristic lack of filters. She got up, went toward Robert, and signed something he didn't understand, then spoke aloud, accusing him of being rude because he didn't look at Emily when talking to her. Then she added the devastating question, didn't he love Emily if he had never learned to talk with her? The silence that followed was heavy as lead. Robert, for the first time in decades, seemed without words. A 5-year-old girl had just demolished his defenses with simple truth. When he finally admitted he loved his daughter, but didn't know how to reach her, Emily responded through Marcus that he had had 23 years to learn and had chosen every day not to do so. The atmosphere seemed about to explode when Robert stood up to leave, but something stopped him. He turned to Marcus, asking if he had learned sign language for his wife. Marcus's answer was simple. He had learned it for love and to build bridges. Emily had lived on an island for 23 years waiting for someone to build that bridge. Lucy intervened again, declaring that the three of them were the bridge. They were a family. Robert looked at his daughter, really looked at her perhaps for the first time, seeing the happiness in her eyes as she interacted with this strange little family, seeing how her hands danced freely when she signed. With a voice broken by emotion, Robert asked if he could learn, if it wasn't too late. Emily studied him for a long time before responding that it's never too late to start truly loving someone. Robert's offer to pay any amount for classes was rejected by Marcus, who agreed to help him not for money, but for Emily. The dinner continued with Robert attempting his first clumsy signs under his daughter's patient guidance. Before leaving, he did something unexpected. He took off his $130,000 Rolex, offering it as payment for classes. Lucy looked at him seriously and said she didn't want his watch. She wanted him to come every week to learn and to bring ice cream. For the first time in years, Emily heard her father laugh genuinely. The months that followed brought changes no one would have foreseen. Robert Morgan, the businessman who never had time for anything but the company, began showing up punctually every Saturday for his ASL classes. Lucy proved to be a severe but effective teacher, correcting Grandpa Robert's errors mercilessly, but rewarding him with hugs when he made progress. Emily, meanwhile, had begun realizing her dream, opening a completely accessible art gallery with video guides in ASL, tactile installations, and a design that privileged visual and tactile experience over auditory. Marcus helped with educational programs, while Robert, for once, limited himself to providing financial support without interfering in decisions. The gallery opened with an event that made news, a completely silent inauguration, where even hearing visitors were invited to experience art through other senses. Success was immediate and unexpected, with reservations for ASL-guided tours extending for months. The relationship between Emily and Marcus deepened with the caution of those who have already suffered, but also with the certainty of those who have found something rare. They had moved in together, transforming Emily's cold penthouse into a true home. Lucy's drawings decorated the fridge. Marcus's books shared shelves with art tomes. A corner of the living room had become the permanent play area. Lucy had lost the nightmares, not completely, but enough to sleep whole nights, enough not to wake up calling for Mommy with terror anymore, but sometimes talking to her in dreams with serenity. She'd started calling Emily Elle with affection, not Mommy. That was reserved for Carmen, but something equally special. One afternoon, while Robert struggled with a particularly complex conversation in signs, he made a confession that surprised everyone. He told how when Emily was born deaf, doctors had told him that with cochlear implants and intensive therapy, he could correct the problem. He had chosen to respect his daughter's condition, but had never considered that meant entering her world instead of waiting for her to adapt to his. Emily's response was a long hug, the first true one they had exchanged since she was a child. No words were needed, neither signed nor spoken, to communicate the forgiveness and understanding that passed between them in that moment. The deaf community of New York, initially skeptical about the rich girls' gallery, began frequenting it, discovering Emily wasn't playing at being a benefactor, but genuinely creating a space where deaf culture was celebrated, not medicalized or pitied. It became a meeting point, a place where deaf artists could exhibit, where ASL workshops were taught, where deaf children could see successful adults who spoke their language. 1 year after that first encounter at Café Sabarsky, Emily's apartment hosted another birthday party, but this time the cake had 24 candles and many hands ready to blow them out together. The living room was full of an improbable mix of people. Members of the deaf community who had become true friends, James the waiter who had taken ASL classes, and could now really converse. Some of Marcus's colleagues, and obviously Robert, who now managed to hold basic but determined conversations in signs. Robert stood up for what everyone thought would be a speech, then stopped and did it in signs, slow and imprecise but comprehensible, asking forgiveness for all the years of silence. He thanked Marcus and Lucy for teaching him to truly talk with his daughter. Lucy, who was now 6 years old and had lost a front tooth, applauded enthusiastically, declaring Grandpa Robert was improving, and that the day before he had signed all of Little Red Riding Hood with only a few errors. Marcus took Emily's hand under the table. They had lived together for 6 months, taking things slowly out of respect for Carmen and Lucy's timing. They hadn't married yet, but Lucy had already planned everything. It would be in spring in Central Park Gardens. Everyone would sign during the ceremony. There would be silent fireworks that she called dancing lights. Emily's gallery had become a recognized cultural institution with educational programs Marcus coordinated, uniting art and sign language. Robert had invested, but as a silent partner, finally understanding his daughter didn't need to be saved, only to be seen and respected for what she was. While cutting the cake, Lucy made her important announcement. She had decided that when she grew up she would teach sign language to all the dads who don't know how to talk with their kids. Robert laughed, admitting she would have a lot of work, and Lucy seriously responded that's why she should start now, asking Emily if she could teach at the gallery. Later that night, while putting Lucy to bed in her new room in the penthouse transformed into home, the girl signed something that moved both adults. She said Mommy visited her in dreams and was happy Daddy had found someone who understands the language of the heart. That Emily was the gift waiting for them. Marcus and Emily looked at each other over Lucy's head. No signs were needed to communicate what they felt in that moment. Sometimes silence says more than 1,000 words when it's a shared, understood, loved silence. While Manhattan slept outside the windows, 3 pairs of hands signed goodnight and I love you in the darkness, creating words of light that only they could see, but that filled the universe with meaning. Emily's life continued to be silent, but no longer empty. It was full of dancing hands, smiles that didn't need sounds, a family that had chosen her as much as she had chosen them. Robert Morgan's wealth had bought many things in his life, but it had been the hands of a widowed interpreter and his daughter. That gave him the only thing money couldn't buy, a voice everyone could understand, and someone who wanted to truly listen to it. The circle had closed, from solitary birthday to extended family, from the silence of isolation to the silence of understanding, from empty wealth to the fullness of love. Emily had learned that it's not silence that isolates, but indifference, and that it's not words that unite, but the will to understand each other. And in a world full of noise, it was precisely their silent conversations that said the most important things. Give a like if you believe love doesn't need words to be true. Comment if you know sign language or would like to learn it. Share to raise awareness about the importance of inclusion and communication. Subscribe for more stories that touch the heart and break down barriers. Because in the end, it's not silence that isolates, but indifference. And it's not words that unite, but the will to understand each other. In a world full of noise, sometimes it's precisely the silent conversations that say the most important things.